Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the third episode of the Hypnotic Quixotic. I have an old friend with me named Alison today who has really impressed me over the years. I've known her for over 20 years, and she has homeschooled her children. Both are special needs, and they're both excelling at a rate that is so incredible. And I wanted her to give a recollection of her experiences to perhaps help you in dealing with the decision to homeschool your child and what the downfalls, if there are any, the pitfalls, and what the upside is. Hi, Allison. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, how are you? Long time no see.
I'm excellent. Thank you. Thank you for joining me because I think that your story is so inspiring. And I want to first find out from you when you pulled your first child out of public school, what prompted that event and how old was your child?
My first child is a boy. His name is Matthew. And we removed him after fifth grade. So our first year of homeschool was sixth grade. Um, I've always had to do homeschooling with him since he was probably about 18 months old because he had some speech delays and word recognition and phonemic awareness. So I've always homeschooled because it was, we don't want to be on the downside going into school. So we would always, do math books and word books and stuff like that pretty much every year since he was in a brick and mortar. However, fourth grade was a stellar year, great teacher. This is probably the second year that Common Core was introduced. Most people know what it is or what it was. I can go into depth on another day of what Common Core is, but Common Core had been in the system now for probably in our state, New York, for 2 years. And fourth grade was probably his last and his best year, although he does have some significant at the time delays in reading, writing, arithmetic. He was still functioning above average, right? So above average at that time would be the majority of that grade. So we're talking fourth grade. So fifth grade we thought was going to be an excellent year, and it turned out to be a horrible year right from the beginning. That's a whole nother story. But towards the middle of the year, I found he was put into a co-taught class, which I've always deterred him from because they can be very exciting, very loud, very distracting for somebody who has sensory processing disorders or anybody on that matter who has a disability. It's very hard to kind of focus and function. So he ended up in the co-taught class, which was not my original request, but unfortunately, due to the circumstances that had arisen from the first 2 weeks of school, that's where he was. And right away, there was a significant standard less than that was being presented in that class. It was
in terms of the subject matter was
the subject
dumbed
matter,
down.
the standard for what those kids had to maintain. So it was very much a without upsetting anybody, it was definitely the standard was lowered.
Okay.
So the object was less than what the average kid would be doing in a regular gen ed class. And it became very disruptive. It was distracting. So again, all of the things I knew that were going to cause an interference and regression, ended up happening. And we had a moment in April where we were concerned because at that time, also due to Common Core, grading systems changed, at least in New York State. They went from, A, B, C, D, F to 1, 2, 3, 4. And what that means is that anybody who scores between a 75 and 100 gets the same grade. regardless of how much work they put into it. So your idea is that if your kid gets a 4 on his report card, that kid who worked really hard to get a 90 is also getting the same number 4 as somebody who got a 77, right?
Wow.
So that's how that works. So it also eliminates the scale for a parent to see if their child is doing better or worse than. And although his grades on paper were 3 pluses and 4, as a parent, you know if your child is really succeeding or not. And at that moment in third quarter, he was home. We were working on something for him, and it had to do with writing. And writing is essential. It's probably the most important subject every child should have, because if you cannot write, you can't do science, you can't do math, you can't do English, you can't do any type of historic writing. So writing is very essential, at least in my eyes. Mm-hmm. And he could not do this anymore at all. Not even close to rules, organization, anything. And that was a concern. So we went to the school. We had a discussion because the principal had promised everything and, promised all these wonderful programs and that he would be in a co-taught class, which you think he would be getting extra help, and he wasn't. So my question was, well, okay, we're seeing a regression. Show us some samples. So they bring out some samples and they look great and fantastic. And I go, okay, well, how did he get there? What do you mean? Well, how did he get there? I want to know, what was your process to get him to this great final draft of writing? And they were like, well, we don't keep that evidence. And I go, well, why wouldn't you? I would like to know the map or the course that you took. So the program that they used for English in New York, and they still do, is called Lucy Calkins. And it's a really bad program. And it removes the phonemic awareness of writing. So now you have spelling errors that school districts are very happy to say, well, your kid's going to be typing on a Chromebook, so they'll autocorrect it, right? So if you can imagine, that's what they said. So all I noticed were all these like little yellow sticky notes on papers. And I was like, well, what are all of these sticky note things? And they were like, well, they work together to create a story. And I go, so this is what you're referring to as collaborative learning style, right? Because we've all heard that in the education system in the last 10 years. What that means is that you get 4 kids that sit around a table and they all have to work together. Now, if you're not working, if you have one kid who's really working hard, which is how they usually set this up, one kid who works really hard, who takes on the responsibility of writing, and then the other 3 do absolutely nothing. So here's the final result of the collaborative learning groups that they set up in classrooms. So at that point, they were trying to make me feel really warm and fuzzy that he was the word is average. Because parents, as we went to school, our parents said we would go to school and they would say he's average, he's working on his, right? And it doesn't sound bad. But if the new average is failing and you don't know that, then you think that your kid is great, but they're actually failing. So, wow. So at that moment, it was like, okay, it was April, May. It was January, February, March, April. So it was somewhere around between March and April, which is usually when all school districts in the state of New York give assessments, not New York State assessments, school districts under Common Core and Race to the Top contracts that they designed with the government 10 years ago, another conversation. They give assessments, school district assessments, and they give them usually 3 times a year, one in the beginning, one in the middle, one at the end. So the goal in the beginning is to see what the kids don't know, right? So it would be, okay, so let's just say you're going into 5th grade. I'm going to make this first assessment on stuff that is projected that you should know. Let's see where you're at. Right. So kids usually come in there and they're like at 33% because the regression over the summer. Right. 33, maybe 45. Well, Matthew was always scoring in the 67 percentile because I did mommy school. So by the end of the school year, I would hope that 67 would be a plus. And it wasn't. So what was established was that at the beginning of the school year, when the majority of these 5th graders took the test, 33 was passing. So 33%. That was the average. 33%. But according to New York State and school districts, and I guess it's like that allowance that within the teacher contracts, I guess, I didn't, I know that it's in there, that they only have to grow that number by 7 or 11%. So what does that number go up to then? So you go from a 33 to what? 10% is 3% more. Is that 36?
Right. Yeah.
Right? So
something like that.
yeah. So what is the goal? The goal is to just barely get over that majority, right? Because that's the new majority now.
Wow.
So now you get to the end of the school year and you test, and the kids, they have rubrics now. So after that failing meeting with the principal and the teacher and all that other stuff in whatever it was, April, May, I got the report card and I was like, how did he get 4s? Like, this doesn't make any sense in writing. Like, I know. So I asked to see the principal, and I went to the school and I said, I'd like to see the assessments. And they always try to say, yo, you can't. And I'm like, yes, I can. It's an educational document. I can do it the nice way or the hard way. So the hard way would be with a lawyer, and then you have to give it to me in 45 days. So he was like, all right, I'll get it for you. So he gets it. He goes, here it is. I said, all right, give me a minute. I didn't even look at math because math, it's Common Core. They're never going to do well in that. But I was very interested in his writing.
Yeah.
And I was horrified. Like, so the rubric was 0 to 40, 40 being the 100 because the 40 is the mean. So that's the 100. He scored a 12. So that's less than 50%. So he just took this test, and I just met with them and they told me everything's honky-dory. But yet he took this assessment, which is teacher driven. It's not made by the state. And he was scoring a 12 out of 40.
Wow.
So I looked at his information and his answers, and paraphrasing, but the question was kind of like, they always give these types of questions to kids, which is just ridiculous, expecting an honest, truthful answer. But the question was somewhat paraphrasing, do you think that homework is good for students or bad for students? What kind of question is that? But anyway, he actually tried to answer it. So his font went from like a size 13 to a size 10 in a broken up sentence. So the sentence usually goes, it's called steal and spit. That's the educational vernacular I'll use for what they teach. So you can steal a part of the question and make it your answer. So, right? Doesn't take any creativity, right? So his answer was so broken and so fragmented that it didn't make any sense. It wasn't even functional at this point. His answer was less than 2.5 sentences. And I was just shocked because here he was telling me he's average. Like, this is the new average, right? You're telling me this is the new average, like 12 out of 40. And
wow.
he came back in and he was like, oh, and it was like, I'm like, I don't even know how you pat yourself on the back.
Yeah.
I'm stunned to learn that you're telling me that this is what my son is at. And I was here not more than 2 months ago telling you my concerns. And I was absolutely on target. And you guys were trying to, cover it up. I said, so you're telling me this is average. So the average out of 126 kids that are moving into 6th grade, so the majority is going to be more than 165 kids, the new majority, this is where they're at, failing. I was like,
wow.
And I was just shocked and stunned, but not really, because I was homeschooling every summer. Why? Because I knew subconsciously, deep down, I knew. And at that moment, it was
that you had to make up for their lack of work.
Absolutely. That I'll never forget. It was July 7th. School was closed. It was after 4th of July. I left the meeting. I called my husband and I was like, that's it. He's not going back. And he was like, what do you mean? I said, well, homeschool or option B. And we did our circuit of Catholic schools and stuff, but they took the money too. So they're doing the same same type of, a little bit more structured, probably 10 years ago. If now looking at Catholic schools, it's very similar to public school. But they weren't willing to try to catch him up. He would have to lose out on all of the things that he loved: music, gym, art. All of those subjects would be replaced with tutors. And I just didn't think that was good for his confidence. Boys usually are rambunctious and they need gym to let out that steam, so it was a very interesting July. And in the state of New York, I believe it was August 12th or 15th that you had to hand in your paperwork for the intent to homeschool. And I went to a conference in New Jersey for homeschooling. And right there, I just made a decision and ordered everything, signed him up, and that was it. And books came home, and the husband was like, "What's this?" And I said, "Homeschool." So it was just that simple.
How did Matthew react?
He's a traditionalist, so he comes from an Italian family, and they believe in the education system of the United States. And and granted, 20, 30 years ago, I would say that as well. But things have changed, times have changed. The system has changed immensely and drastically, and it wasn't offering my son an opportunity to grow, to use his to be challenged, right? Because let's not challenge and see how far we can push them to do really well, because that's not something we do anymore.
To prepare them for the world. Yeah.
Right. So we homeschooled, and at first it wasn't something that was warm and fuzzy, that was received very easily. But within the first, I'm going to say by Christmas, we were sitting around the table, and it's, my son at the time, he was very much like, he couldn't start the conversation, but if you started it and pulled him into it, he would be receptive and he would communicate a lot better. So I figured, okay, let's just test this out. So we're sitting at the table, and we started talking about European history, because that's 6th grade for my homeschool. And I thought my husband was going to he was paralyzed, because he couldn't believe what my kid was saying, because he was talking about Europe and the European countries and the wars that took place, and he was just shocked. And
he was impressed, right?
Ever since then, he was a strong supporter. He couldn't necessarily see all the fruits of it, because he wasn't in it in the trench with me on a daily basis. But now that he is going to be 18 years old, he just finished high school, his senior year, with 27 credits from community college, and not in electives. They were mostly predominantly English literature courses, history courses, macroeconomics. So, and he's got straight A's for the whole year. So, and all of the professors, who, believe it or not, were like, this is the probably one of the best well-written, theses, and very well written. You have a great eye for words. And so that was where my focus was. It was predominantly English and literature, and, growing his skill set. And now he's a functioning, freshman first year under his belt for college. He's flying planes, and he's a competitive swimmer. And so he's a very, very well-rounded individual. He still has his little quirks, but through pushing, through giving him solutions to how to deal with, because it's mostly stress and how to reactive, right? Reactive. It's always like, the spikes go up. So it's about teaching them how to harness that energy and realize it first. You have to understand it, and then say, okay, I need to do such and such in order to bring myself back down to a level where I can actually function. And there's a highs and lows in the beginning. Like homeschool, the first year thought I was going to throw it in. It was not easy, but as a 6th grader, because he'd already got a taste of the public school system. So everybody's on the bus, everybody's getting a brand new book bag. And, we didn't have that, but I had to do other things that drew him in. He loves.
Yeah. To make up for the loss of the social interaction.
Yeah. And, my kid was more social than most kids in public school. Between, competitive swimming, 4-H clubs, Civil Air Patrol, volunteer work. He was more well-rounded and well-versed than most kids in public school. So I don't think most homeschoolers do too bad in the socialization area. We have field trips too.
But how were you a good student in
No.
school? And how did you find your confidence to feel like you could actually achieve this? Or it's such a great achievement on your part to have a son who's 18 years old who's better off than the majority of 18-year-olds that come out of a public school system. I mean, I want to commend you on that, but can you talk a little bit about the beginning and what your challenges were and what you were thinking in your head for people who are thinking, there is no way I can do this. I hated school. I sucked at this subject. How am I going to do this?
Well, I was brought up in a Catholic school, elementary to middle school, skipped 8th grade, went to public school, and then it went downhill from there, for obvious reasons. We have fun, we cut class, you're not having a nun chase you down the stairwell. But I feel now that I've always had potential to be a great student. I just didn't have the structure or the parents to really invest. And I think it's really about the parents investing. And I don't have a college education. I went to 2 years of college to have fun, but I knew that I needed to do this for my son. And if I had to learn along with him, that's what I did. And believe it or not, I did. It was quite alarming to learn certain things about history. It was bizarre. And I'm like, what a great—
You're like, how did I not remember this?
Okay, who knew Stalin was in that picture with, Roosevelt and the guy in England? Who knew? He was always cut out of that picture. Didn't know that they were breaking bread. Who knew that? I didn't know that. Yeah.
Who's the English guy?
Churchill.
Yeah.
Who knew? He's always been cut out of that picture. And then I'm like, wait a second. Did they Photoshop this?
Sketchy.
I'm telling you. So it was a great learning experience for myself. I wasn't a literary genius writing, but I learned the rules. And through learning the rules with him, my son, I've become even a better writer. My vocabulary, the books that we have to read, listen, okay, parents, and just want to let you know that if your kids are coming home with picture books in middle school and they're reading Flat Stanley or they're reading, Batman, that's not literary work. It's not going to help or improve their vocabulary because this is what they were allowing kids to do, to read. It was optional.
I can't.
It was so crazy. But I learned, my vocabulary improved, my writing improved. I knew how to do transitions because nobody teaches you transitions in school or what they were. And it was just a great benefit for both of us. We took this journey together, and 6th grade was hard because it was his first year not being in a classroom setting. But what it also did was it eliminated the noise and all of the other psychological poo-poo that's going on in school. I could tell you that every year for the whole existence of my kid's education in a school district, he was assaulted every year. I'm surprised I'm not in jail, but he was assaulted every year. So is that what they were promoting? Was that the social that he was missing out on? Wow. So it was definitely a change for him for the first year. The first year was really rough because you had to undo everything. You have to undo the learning that they've learned. It's combative. It's a little bit tumultuous at times because, this is what they told me, right? Because as a new mom, you're like, listen to your teachers. Don't talk back, blah, blah, blah. Share everything. And then don't do that, parents, okay? Because then your kid is always going to be like, take whatever you want from me. Don't share. So it was definitely a difficult road. 7th grade was better. 8th grade was amazing because now he had the rules. He knew the system. He knew, because we didn't change our homeschool program. So he knew what was expected of him. He knew what the grades were expected, nothing less than a 75, or they'll kick it back and they'll make you take the test again. A whole nother one, by the way. But it was a great program. Faith is also something that is instilled in our family now, very, very hardcore about it, because I feel that, who can't benefit from kindness, generosity, being grateful, being appreciative of your parents and the people around you. So this program was encompassed all of that as well. And there was also, this program specifically there was accountability. So everybody's like, yeah, but you grade their stuff. Well, yeah, I do all throughout the year, but quarterly tests and book reports and English assignments are all graded by the professional teachers on the other end of my program. So it's kind of like there's accountability. Okay, he's not doing so good in this area. Why are you grading? So there is some accountability in that area. Ninth grade was excellent. 10th grade was amazing. 11th grade, I mean, by the time he was in 10th grade, I was no longer doing any of his schoolwork with him. He was self-taught.
Wow.
So now he was teaching himself rather than me sitting next to him, because now I had Shyla, my daughter. So I needed 6th, 7th, and 8th grade prepared me to get him ready to be a self-learner. So now he is a self-learner. So he doesn't need a teacher to explain stuff to him. He's very well capable of reading the material and teaching himself. So all of the classes this year were online and not live. So he had to, not live. So he had to.
That's discipline.
Yeah. He had to take the information, decipher it, figure it out, and come up with, kind of interpret what it was that they wanted him to learn. So there are different variations of homeschooling, but mine is very strict. I'm usually, 8 in the morning till like 3, but then again, we're always off to doing something. So in the middle of the day, we could be horseback riding, or we could be at a sewing class, or we could be on a hike, or if the days are beautiful, we're going kayaking. And if we want to go on a field trip to Cooperstown for the day, we go to Cooperstown. So it's very flexible. It's been a really great asset to our family. But I think overall, it has really turned my son into a well-established, independent thinker, a learner. He'll totally learn things on his own. And he is absolutely not afraid to enter a room and have a conversation.
Wow. That is such a testament to you. And you're homeschooling your daughter as well, right?
Yes.
And how old is she?
She is 12 going on 17, which most parents can feel the pain of a daughter. They know what it's like. But she's a different learner. She is not, let's sit at 8 and work till 2. She is very much like a butterfly. We're going to do a little bit of this. We're going to take a break and we're going to go horseback riding. And we're going to do a little of this and we're going to take another little break and I'm going to make lunch.
It sounds normal. That sounds the way that teaching should be done. It's not like in a prison.
Yes, it should be. Although my children will think it's a prison. They'll tell everybody it's a prison, but I don't care. The fruits of the parents will relate.
Let them go back to public school and then they'll really know what a prison is.
Well, yes, exactly. You're going to be timed at your lunch. You're going to be timed at your break. You're going to be timed running from one end of the school to the other. I mean, our high school I call it the Vatican. You need 7 minutes to get from one end to the other. And if you're a minute late, they actually penalize you. I don't know what they do. I can't imagine. They don't do much, but
obviously.
So it's just, I have a lot of friends that are still in school, and I have one friend of mine. She homeschooled her daughter the same year I homeschooled mine, but her son stayed in the high school, and he was in AP English, which old school people know that's for smart kids, right? So I'm of that mentality. You're an AP, you're in Regents, you must be awesome, right? So you would think the same thing applies today, but it doesn't, because when COVID happened, he was home and they had not come up to snuff to provide educational live or any type of education for that matter for the remainder of the year.
Right.
So after 3 months, she got sick and tired of him sitting around the house. So she signed him up for some programs that her daughter was doing through this program called OutSchool. It's a great program. It has hundreds of thousands of teachers teaching all different types of things, from sign language to art to biochemistry. So you can check that out for yourself. But She signed him up for some English writing classes that he should, according to his AP courses that he's getting 97s in, he should be like slamming that out. And the OutSchool program is not like a teacher thing. It's not like you're paying taxes to a teacher. So they're not going to be like, hey, pay attention over here. They're collecting a check, right? But apparently this one particular teacher was very concerned, and she reached out to my friend and said, your son should not be in my class. Are you sure he's in 9th grade AP? She said, absolutely. She said, there's absolutely no way. And she sent her the transcript, and she was like, I don't know what they're teaching in New York, but this kid is not AP. He can't write a functional paragraph.
Wow.
Totally blew up. So.
That's so scary.
Yeah, he AP getting 97s. Okay.
The bar is so low.
It's low. The new average is failing. Keep that in mind. So she was just stunned. So she had made a decision at that time that she wasn't going to send him back to school. It was a waste of time. So the following year, he signed up. He was 16. He was turning 16. So therefore, you can actually legally in the state of New York remove your child from school at 16. So that's what she did. So she removed him at 16. So there's a program in New York State. I'm sure there's probably one in every state where you could do a 24 credit program. So you would sign up for college and apply for the 24 credit program. And in essence, what that means is you're going to get these 24 credits. You're going to pass with an above, I believe it's above C, which is, high for public school anyway, because they're only accepting 65 is passing right now. So he applied, and in 2 years he got his 24 credits, and he applied to, okay, you ready? 6 colleges, got accepted to all of them. And he applied to 6 colleges, got accepted to all of them. Stony Brook is one of them. He's going there to be a medical engineer. Yeah, go figure. Okay. Dropped out of school, went to college for 2 years for the 24 credit program.
My God.
And now he's accepted to 6.
How does he compare scholastically to your son?
He's a different mind. He's more scientific, where my son is not. So he is very science driven. He's always been science driven. He's an investigator just by nature, her son. So he's always had it in his mind that he was going to do science. Right. So that's where he's following. That's where he's landing. So he's applied. He applied. I know this is going to sound crazy to most parents here, but he applied less than 4 weeks ago, and he got accepted to all 6. Yeah, I know.
So what conclusion do you come to?
My conclusion is that education, the road, the path that you take, it could be anything. It could be designed whatever interests your child. And it could be brick and mortar if you would like it to be, and that's fine. Those are some choices that parents can, but unfortunately, you're going to end up having to suck up all the caca that they deliver to your kid. I'm
confused. So in your opinion, when she pulled him out of school at 16, that was an excellent thing to do?
For him, yes. For him. It's not for everybody, because he, again, was socially not connecting with anybody at school, because the way that the school system is set up, it's set up for your kid not to have any real connections to kids, because they find out who your friends are and they make sure that you're not in classes with them. That happened to my daughter in 2nd grade.
Why do they do that?
Why? Because they feel that they feel that having that one person eliminates you from experiencing other people. Right? So
how do you feel about that?
I don't like it at all, because I feel that, it actually kind of harms them at a very young age to think that they don't have somebody to rely on as a good friend. Right? So then they go through life. Like I could tell you right now, my son has maybe 2 really good friends. That's weird at that age. You should have a lot of friends, but they don't make major connections. So there isn't that lifelong friend. I know I have friends from when I was 6 years old that are still my friends.
Yes.
And you don't have that connection because it's been eliminated through the school system. Plus also the internet, all its phones and all of those other distractions eliminate real serious connections. So it's harmful in a way. And I think it's
in a way, it's very harmful.
But parents don't, I think parents think like school is what it was like when we were kids. It's not.
No way.
The only way I can describe it is it's a battle zone. Every day they have a battle. They have to pick a color, pick a flag, pick a pronoun, pick a this, pick a side. They're like 9, 10, 11, even your 15-year-olds. They're having to make these decisions every single day. And all they're trying to do is just not get caught up in the mix, right? Not get
Right. They're just trying to learn
right.
basic skills like basic history and math and science. And on top of that, they have to, be indoctrinated. And if they don't have the right opinion or
Yes,
view, that's going to harm their self-esteem even worse if they're a bad student. So
sure.
don't you think that a lot of kids are going to lie and go along
Conform.
with an agenda just because they're like,
Yes,
okay,
to
well, if
survive.
I suck at school, at least if I go along with this agenda, I'll be okay.
Absolutely. Well, it's survival, right? How do I survive a class? How do I survive school?
Yeah.
Our school, we have over, I think there's like 9,000 students in our school district. I think in just the high school alone, there might be 2,500 kids. So it's like a country in there, and then you're like one out of 2,500. You're not going to be able to kind of march to the tune of your own drummer and not be
No.
noticed. So, there are different reasons why parents homeschool. Some parents homeschool because of vaccination. Some parents homeschool because of the indoctrination at school, or in my case, the low standard. So or parents just want a more connected relationship with their kids, because I feel that as parents, we're more connected to our kids, homeschoolers, because
Yes.
they're always coming to us.
Your family is
Yeah,
so like tight
family
knit and
is the most
normal the
important.
way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. And I feel that it is a great way to also make the parent bond unbreakable. It's unbreakable because
Yeah.
right now, as everybody knows, the parental rights are being challenged in almost every state there is, whether it be medical, whether it be physical, whether it be educational, whatever it is, but they're trying to dismantle that. So this really does make the parent bond unbreakable,
Yeah, it
because
cements it.
it
Yep.
cements it, and you're talking about it all the time, and you're encouraging, family first mentality, and it's hard because there's so much out there. I do my other hardcore was my son didn't get a phone until he was 14, I think 14, 15
Excellent.
years old.
Excellent.
My daughter doesn't have one. She would love one, but she's not getting one. She may never get one. but at this point, you have to kind of like, I know parents, it's easy to go along. It's harder to go in the opposite direction.
So I would argue and say that your children probably communicate far better than the average person their age, the average kid their age, because they're not on social media.
Well, my daughter is shy, which is a shocker. Most people find, but my son, he will talk to a post lamp. He doesn't care. He is very confident. This is a kid that I can drop him off at any camp anywhere in this country, and he's like, okay, let's just go. He
How
is
about that?
he is very much, he's come a long way. He'll say he's not confident, but anybody who can walk into a room and not feel, somehow I got to hide a little bit, because that's me. I like to just hide in the corner. He is very commanding. And he doesn't even realize it. So that's the better part of it. We
And
have a lot of,
had he stayed in the school system, he would have been labeled, and that label would have suppressed him and oppressed
in
him.
the future, always.
Yes.
Always. Well, because all information and all documents that go to a school district, they're not protected by HIPAA. They
Right.
are educational documents. So if your school district and your state made a bunch of changes, which most of them did 10 years ago with the Race to the Top money and Common Core, they share that information with whoever. the CDC, the State Department of Education. It's an educational document. It's not protected by HIPAA anymore. So having any child who has any type of special needs, all of that information is an educational document. It's not protected. So that was also another concern of mine. It was like, okay, well, where does this data go? How far does it go? Where does it end up? Who has it? Let's just, early on, we all know that boys are very rambunctious. It's just who they are. Mm-hmm. But apparently everybody wants to label them with autism, ADHD, give them pills and kind of like feminize them to be quiet like little girls and sit in a chair and behave. Yeah. But the reality is that we're not giving them an opportunity to just see, okay, let's just give them some opportunity to grow. Let's just see, maybe he's not going to be a mad scientist. Maybe he's going to be an adventurer. Maybe he's going to be like that crazy guy on, I don't know, I think it's TLC, where he's jumping off cliffs and, living in a tent in Alaska. Maybe so that's cool. What your kid is, but that's there's nothing wrong with that either. Yeah. There are kids that are just born to be adventurers. And if you don't have those adventurers like Christopher Columbus, although people don't want to believe that he came here, you need those boys who will grow up to be men to go out and make those adventures and discover stuff. If they're sitting in a classroom and you're hyping them up with pills and keeping them trapped in there to act like little girls, then,
And to keep them in classes that treat them like they can't handle harder subject matter, what are you doing to that child?
Oh, it was harmful 10 years ago. I can't speak to what's going on right now. All I know is what my friends tell me. It's wicked. It
sounds like a crime. It sounds criminal.
It is. There are other severe things that, most parents on a regular basis would say, there's no way in hell I would send my kid to that school just because of what's in the library and accessible to their 9-year-old. But, not to segue or anything, but I think that kids today are being forced to make decisions as to who they're going to be in the future. And it's not natural. It's very orchestrated.
Coercive.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
And it was done, and it was actually pretty visible 10 years ago when Race to the Top funds came in and Common Core came in and Achieve came in. There was, I'm not a speaker. I don't like to speak anywhere. I try to stay as incognito as possible, but I had gone to a few board meetings and put myself out there. And I was just shocked that under Race to the Top funds and all the other, connections and contractors and subcontractors that were going to have access to your child's information and data eventually, that there was actually, by the time that they're in 5th or 6th grade, the data would absolutely tell them what your child should be learning in college by 5th or 6th grade.
Yeah. Data isn't indicative of a person. That's the danger of AI and algorithms and all this inorganic bullshit that's going on.
Who's designing the algorithm? It's going to give you what you want, and what do you want? You want cogs in a wheel.
Exactly.
So Samantha, who is, since the day she was born, was interested in medicine and she wants to be a doctor. That's organic. But in 5th grade, there's Joey, who, although he does really great in science and he likes to dissect things, he's going to be put into engineering when his path is engineering. So we're going to force him to do, AP English. We're going to force him to do, Algebra 2 in 7th grade when he may not be ready for it. But what is that going to do to him? It's going to
make him lose confidence.
Absolutely. And it's the school district's school and learning are not organic anymore. They are very manipulated and driven by data and algorithms, like you said, because they want an outcome, and what they want and desire are people who are just going to do what they're told and not do what they want to do, and be happy.
Bingo.
So
yeah, unfortunately.
Yep.
So, they're cranking out a collective hive mind.
I just had this conversation with a friend of mine about, he took his son, and who's homeschooled. he took his son and 3 boys that were public school to go see, I guess there's like a new animated Batman. I might be saying animation, but it might be, I don't know, something else, whatever. But it's like a cartoon. And he said, when I picked them up, he said they were talking about the same thing over and over and over again, but only one kid was talking. And then the other 3 would chime in. I said, well, there's your collective learning environment. One person leads the conversation and everybody agrees. It's kind of like when you go to college campuses. What do? You get the one loud person and then the body agrees. So that's the collective learning environment that they learn in first, second, third, fourth, and fifth grade, and actually all through high school. So it's collective learning.
Or collaborative
right? Learning. Yep.
Yeah.
Collective and collaborative learning. So, but it also creates a collective and collaborative think set.
Yeah. And that's detrimental because it puts you in a role. And if you might want to be like more of the leader, but you don't have that kind of a personality, you lay back.
Yep.
And then you don't get to fully develop into the full person that you are inherently.
Yes. And it's easier just to go along with everybody.
Yeah,
right?
Because you don't want to make any waves. You want everybody to like you. You don't want to challenge the status quo. You don't want to rock the boat. You don't want to be a racist. You don't want to, be a homophobe. You don't want to be a transphobe. You don't want to be, there's like all these things that kids have to be so careful about that shouldn't even be in school systems.
No, it shouldn't, but it's designed to be that way on purpose so that they get them early. And then it also destroys the
Hitler.
Yeah.
Like the Hitler Youth.
Mao, Hitler. I mean,
because you have to get the children, because then it takes 20 years to deprogram the children.
Yep. It's but it's a design. It's a design that's, it's been used before. We never thought probably in our lifetime that we would have to be challenged by this, but here we are. And the unfortunate situation that the education system is looking at right now is that, one parent in a school district of 10,000 is not going to make a difference. 200 parents aren't going to make a difference. You need a 50% of the majority of a school district to go in and fight, but parents are afraid. They're not like the generations of the past. They're not where I'm going to go in and I'm going to fight and I'm going to, do what I need to do. But
they're not Gen X.
No, and no, they're not, and they're definitely not the greatest generation that ever lived either. Because
we're the two that are like badass.
Yes, it's the beginning, and then and then it's the end, right? But it's very telling to see that you go to school boards and parents aren't there, especially right now with all of these other books that are finding their way into the school district, and they are there. I'm sorry. I know everybody's like, no, they're not. They've been there for 10 years, but it just happened to be that some people started to actually peek and look and pay attention. But this has already been, at least in my school district, it's been in there since Matthew was in 6th grade.
Can you imagine?
Yeah. So
Can
it's
you
there.
Imagine?
But look at the outcome. You know who most people are targeted? Most of the people in the school district that are targeted are girls. They're very confused, right? So, so even with this stuff in school, they're not pulling them out. They're not because
they don't want to sacrifice. They don't want to make the sacrifice.
That's one thing. But the other thing is that they're going to miss out on the prom. They're not going to have friends.
Yeah, well, that's Matrix shit.
It's once you get out of it, you see it, but like when you're in it, you're just in it.
Your kids haven't missed jack shit. Your kids have had a far more fun time. They might not realize it now, but they will realize it in the coming years as they mature, that they were able to break into their day, go horseback riding, like have more freedom. And to be more challenged, to be set up to do better in life, right?
Yes.
And school is very sick socially, I feel like, for kids now. So I think that you putting them into extracurricular programs instead, of the public school, in addition to the homeschooling, has given them a very well-rounded experience.
Yes, it has to be well rounded, and it has to be in things that, are challenging, that,
That's the key word,
it has to
challenging,
be challenging.
because they
It
don't do
really
that.
does. So because of my son's communication skills very early on in speech and auditory processing and sensory, it's kind of like you're getting hit with all this information, and you're hearing the cars, and you're here. So there's a lot of information that he's taking in. So it's very hard to focus. So like team sports early on were not good, because like, okay, he's out in the baseball field, he's in left field. Well, the ball went out to right field. Blah. Well, there's the action. I'm going to run over there. And then he gets yelled at because he's over there, right? Or he's on a basketball court and he's like, throw the ball to me. And he's taking it away from his friends on his team. I mean, like, so there were some certain things that you're like, team sports are not going to work right now, and you have to be realistic, but he could still be on a team, and he can be on a swim team, or he could be on a gymnastics team. He's
That's right.
independently responsible for his own outcome. He knows where he has to go. But he still has the team environment where he competes as a team with teammates. So swimming, karate, jujitsu, gymnastics. Those are the sports where you're going to see a lot of kids succeed, who are on the spectrum, and have some difficulty in the socialization of communication early on in life.
Yeah, but every kid is different no matter
Every kid
what.
is different.
Everybody's an individual. So spectrum or no spectrum, it's wherever you fall.
Right. Absolutely.
Because
There isn't one set rule book for any kid.
No.
For any kid, whether you have a disability or not.
But they want there to be. They want there to be. And they want everybody to be within a box, labeled, and oppressed and suppressed.
Yes.
And following the narrative, the indoctrination, and robbing them of their inherent imagination and potential.
Yes, 100%. And I mean, it will eventually show up in history where you're going to have massive deficits, especially in like exploratory or in
careers,
in medicine, and engineering. I mean, it's going to be catastrophic because, as much as we want to say that we are at the peak of education in this country, we are not. They're not putting it first. They're not taking it serious. And, China and Russia are moving quickly to.
It's the worst it's ever been.
And
that is purposeful.
Eliminate those gaps.
Yeah, that's purposeful.
And, I'm not sure what most kids are going to do with like an art degree. I don't know what they're going to do with an art degree or gender studies.
Yeah. Or like, how
many social workers do we need?
Right.
And I guess we're going to need a lot because everybody's going to be on welfare, right?
Yeah. Everybody's going to be mental. How about TikTok in China is mostly highlights children who are exceptionally talented in science and math and academia, whereby TikTok here glorifies like twerking and degenerate behavior, and our military is so busy emasculating all of our soldiers, where you see footage of Chinese, soldiers like super masculine.
They're 7 years old, taking apart firearms.
Yeah.
We used to do that. We don't do that anymore.
That guy, Derek Grace, I like him. He's that. Do you know who he is?
No, I like Colin Noor. I like him.
Derek Grace is this black guy, right? And he has a gaggle of kids, and they can be blindfolded, and he can put
anything
artillery in their hands, and they're like 22,
right?
Like they name all the bullets, and then they can.
Oh, I gotta know that guy.
Yeah, Derek Grace, look him up. He and his wife, they're very wealthy too. They homeschool, and they're very successful. They have a bunch of different companies,
Mm,
and all his children from a very young age know how to handle firearms, respect firearms,
yes.
know specific facts about history, about
Hmm.
the world, that his 3-year-old knows more than the average
Yeah.
6th or 7th grader in our school system.
Yes, our favorite YouTube videos are the ones where you'll see these funny commentary guys that go out and they're like, "When was who fought in the Revolutionary War?" Like
Yeah.
Shyla loves to watch those, and she's like, "Are
Mark
you serious?"
Dice. Yeah,
Yeah,
Mark Dice does them, and like other people, they're like,
Millennial Millie used to do it. It was
oh
quite,
yeah, I
yeah,
remember her.
I do. She was funny.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, like the whole idea is that, you want to learn, you want to educate yourself, and you just become a sponge. But
Yeah.
so what they've done is they've kind of created the internet and they put it in schools and they were like, this is now your new learning tool, but it's not education, because the problem is that, so during Race to the Top and whatever these other programs, all these school districts got Chromebooks, Microsoft, Google. So what happened with that is that Microsoft and Google created programs for them to do learning. So it was interesting. I had a friend of mine whose child was also on the spectrum, and he had a program that was given to him through Chrome. It's called Read Write Gold, I think it was called, and it was to help him decipher like vocabulary, because that's what happens when you're reading a sentence. It's just so much information that you're trying to decipher what it is. It's like an executive functioning thing. So it was quicker to put a reading assignment into this computer, and then as he's reading it, you could click on the words and it would pop up what the vocabulary of it was, so then he would better understand what the actual story is going to be about, which was a great concept. But when you clicked on the vocabulary word and the vocabulary definition was different. Oh yeah. So
Interesting.
patriot.
Sketchy.
So I just remember this off the top of my head. Patriot was no longer somebody that was like you looked at like
Love
being.
of their country.
No, it was you know what it was listed as? A nationalist.
to try
So
to connect it to Hitler,
yeah,
right? Not socialism or
yeah,
whatever,
that's
National
sixth. That
socialism.
was sixth grade. It was sixth grade,
Unreal.
and I was like, "What is that? Like, what just happened?" Because I was trying.
Indoctrination, yeah.
Oh, it's Google, it's
They're
Microsoft,
changing the meaning of words.
everything. So like, again, like, so you don't have books for history in school. Everything is done through Microsoft or Word. You're going to download a book. What kind of book are you going to get? I mean, like, it's so, listen, like, if I didn't grow up in the
Nefarious.
environment that I grew up in, you would have to be a moron to figure out, to say to yourself, there's no way. They're being honest. They're being truthful. How
Dude,
else?
we were for the streets, okay?
Yeah,
And that aided you
absolutely.
so
100%.
heavily in
100%.
homeschooling. And I want people to glean from this discussion that it doesn't matter if you were a great student, if
No,
you were for the streets, and you're probably going to be a better teacher for your
absolutely.
child.
And you're going to, never mind a better teacher, but you're going to also be able to sniff out the stupidity when you need to. Because
Yeah.
I've had to do that on many occasions. And I'm like, not even in your lifetime are you going to be able to get over on me. So,
Yeah.
because now is the new thing of iChat, right? So
Yes.
think about this, that like, you can actually get somebody to write a report for you, not like it was back in the day, right, where you'd have to pay somebody into the table, you get a report, maybe a couple of words are changed or whatever, but you're going to get a spit out original from chat. What is it called? iChat, I think it was, right? Was it Chat
OpenAI,
AI or
Chat
something
GPT, OpenAI.
something like that? Yeah. So
Yeah.
now they're all panicking about the fact that these kids are going to be doing reports through that.
Yeah, but it's all programmed by
Yeah.
the political
Yes.
ideologues. So everything that comes out has a particular slant.
Absolutely. 100%.
So it is artificial intelligence, okay?
100%.
Because it's artificial.
Absolutely.
It's not
So
intelligence.
the fact that parents who come from the street or come from the, didn't maybe make it all the way through school, but they have a background in bullshit, they're
Yeah.
going to be able to sniff that stuff out.
I love that.
That's what college did you go to? College
Yeah.
bullshit. So
Yeah.
let me just let you know right off the bat, anything you say is just not going to get over. So
Yeah.
there are, but kids today don't learn hard knocks. They don't learn the street stuff. Like my son, he's not as streetwise. My 12-year-old is street smart. Like,
Yeah.
we were in Harbor Freight and we're standing at the counter and she was like, Mom, did you see that guy run out of here with a what the thing is it called? An air compressor. And I go, no way. And she was like, yeah, he just ran from the back with the blue air compressor. And I'm like, my gosh, at least she's paying attention to her environment.
He stole it?
Well, that was in the height of when they just ran into stores and took whatever they wanted, right? So she's seen it on many occasions. She's very street smart. She's more street smart than my son is.
She's like situationally aware.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
She's like, that guy don't look right. I said, well, then he's probably not right. Don't go near him.
Good.
Now, Matthew, he's old school mate. Everybody's wonderful. You have to trust everybody. He's
so, but if you come with that energy, though, I had a guest on yesterday and we were talking about that. If you come with that frequency and that energy, if you're discussing consciousness, then you're not going to attract trouble, so to speak. But
it's kind of like a vapor.
Yeah, if you're asserting yourself with some kind of attitude, negativity, shit like that, you're going to attract that. So It's not necessarily a bad thing that he adopts that vision of the world, but
he'll eventually he'll figure it out. I mean, he's had a rough patch or two with learning through friends and who were friends and who weren't, but that's what makes him being homeschooled. I'm able to not orchestrate it. I'm able to control it, where in a school district, you don't have any control over it. They're going to be a bully and there's going to be one side and the other side, and you're never going to know whose side it was because they don't want you to know.
No, they do
my
not.
son was physically assaulted in 4th grade on on the playground. And what it came down to is that a group of boys were trying to force him to kiss a girl. And so on the playground, where are all these freaking teachers' aides that we're paying for to make sure our children are protected and safe, right? So when we shook it all out, it was that, it wasn't a big deal, right? It wasn't a big deal. Yes, it was a big deal because my son was being forced to do something against what he knows was wrong to do to somebody else. But this is not a big deal.
Yeah, because now that's like assault too.
Yeah.
That's a sexual assault.
Well, not really now, because the vernacular is changing on that stuff.
So what is it?
So it's not, they were interested, right? So it's not a sexual assault anymore. It's going to be, they were interested and they just misinterpreted what the message was. They didn't understand. Maybe that person didn't deliver it properly. So that's the spin.
Yeah,
right?
But what about consent?
No.
Do they keep flipping it and mental gymnastics?
It was just they didn't receive the information right. It has nothing to do with consent right now, at least not until they vote and turn 12-year-olds into consenting minors to, do anything.
Yeah, you would know more than me. I'm just going by like cultural.
Oh no, that's happening. 12 years old will be a consent to, to medical. They can get vaccinations at 12. They can authorize,
cut their penis off,
cutting up their bodies. So that's like this big number. But what does that actually kind of help, though? It helps who? The pedophiles, right? Those minor loving adults. Is that what it's called? MAPS, I think they refer to them as.
Minor attracted persons,
otherwise known as pedophiles. But if we make the consent 12, then they're not, right? Oh,
yeah. Whoa.
So who's changing those? The legislative body, the politicians? Why are they changing it? I don't know. There's some trafficking that seems to be sprouting up a lot lately. So maybe they're trying to protect themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed having this
I
conversation
love
with
having
you.
this conversation with you.
And I want you to tell people where they can look to start to investigate homeschooling. Like, what's a good starting point?
The best starting point is Homeschool Legal Defense Association. Most people get turned off by it because it's 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 connected to Catholicism, Christianism. It's predominantly it's religious. It protects the body of religious right to educate your child at home, but they are amazing with just any. You don't have to be Catholic. You could be any denomination you want. It's a minor charge, I think, of like $100 a year, but you have a lawyer on site. You have a lawyer at your convenience to have a conversation with. It's also one place where every state's legal homeschool regulations are listed. They also have online classes to help if you feel like you yourself can't do every subject. Most people are intimidated by math. They have live math classes that you can take. But for the majority, they give you like how to write your homeschool letter of intent. They help you write your IHIP, which is your educational plan. They show you how to do your quarterly reports. But it's a really great base to start at. And I highly recommend, just even if you just want to go in and peek and look around, there's tons of information. But the reason why I pay is because I live in a state. New York is one of the most heavily regulated homeschooling states, and I live in a very not so friendly school district. So we have had Homeschool Legal Defense come to our school district like 3 times to set the school district put it in its place. So
Amazing.
yeah, and anytime I've ever had a question, I can call and they are responsive. But it also, by joining, you also get like what's called homeschool parent discounts. So all the teacher things that teachers get at stores and crafts and educational supply stores, now you get those. That's a plus. You're saving 10 to 20% sometimes. So any dollar amount counts because we don't get any refunds from the state for not sending our kids to school.
Right.
The only other thing I could say is there are hundreds of groups online in your communities. So in New York, there's New York LEA, which is the largest group. And then there are county groups within that. So if you want to stay more local, you'll start at the magnet program, which is New York LEA. And then there's a New York Duchess, there's a New York Orange, there's a New York Rochester. And then they have their smaller groups within that. But libraries are really great. They're popping up with a lot of homeschool programs everywhere in every state.
Okay.
There's also co-ops. So those are some programs where retired teachers, or even parents who are teachers that want to homeschool their kids, they kind of do a collaborative thing with a group of parents. Some parents are going to teach science. Some parents will teach English. Some parents will teach social studies. And they kind of like get a space, usually in a basement or at a library. You rent a room and they'll do like programs there. I would definitely recommend looking at, some states are okay with homeschoolers participating in their sports programs, but others aren't. New York is not friendly in that area. So you'll definitely want to venture out and get your child involved in some type of program, whether it be 4-H, whether it be a swim program, a baseball program, sewing classes in sewing stores. They usually have programs for girls. Also, there are tons of farms in the area. They usually do like a lot of educational programs throughout the homeschool year, because homeschooling is blowing up. I mean, it's very frightening to the legislative body because they're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. So now they're bringing in a lot of immigrants to take the places of those kids. So
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so they need bodies to, get the state aid. But I would definitely, don't be afraid. I know in Florida, if I had ever had the dream of moving to Florida, I was very excited about a lot of their aquatic programs on the water. because they do scuba homeschooling. They do like aquatic biology programs down in, oh gosh, what is that? Not on the East Coast, on the West Coast, somewhere down south, not Miami, but right before it, there's a really kind of cool cul-de-sac where they great homeschool.
Key Biscayne or something?
Somewhere around there, but they do
Yeah.
like a lot of homeschool programming there. But, and homeschooling can be anything. All you need is just a group of people to say, hey, you know what, maybe we can all do this together and just jump in. Every state's regulations are different. In the state of New York, it's, you're going to have a heart attack when I tell you, but 4 English, 2 math, that's all that's required. No language. There's 4 history, but of the history, you have to have 1 is a civics, and 1 is U.S. history. Obviously, you should know that. But and then there's electives. So, and there's 3 science. So New York is the toughest one. So you can see that there's really, if you just make your program, stay the course, it's really not that bad. You just got to want to do it. It's time consuming. It's scary as hell.
Yeah.
But your first year will be difficult because you're trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work. You're going to buy a whole bunch of crap that you don't need. And you just have to remember that this is for your child.
Listen, I have a great business idea for you.
Oh, what?
Homeschool consultant.
Well, you can't in state of New York. You can't kind of be a consultant. And in most states you can't because it has to be parent driven. So you can't have an outside entity unless like you go into in New York, you can access college programs very early. So you can take CLEP, you can take AP, you can take other courses online. So that's the only place where you're going to be able to get an outside educational person to do it because that's what you're signing on for. You're going to be the educator.
Got it. Oh, well, that was a
different. Like Georgia, you don't even need to tell anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, I hope this podcast is helpful for people who are considering homeschooling. And since you've had such stellar results, I mean, I hope that it inspires people to invest in their children's future and in our country's future.
Yes. Don't wait. If you've been hesitating and there's somebody on your shoulder saying, this isn't right, go with your gut. It's not right. You have to take control and you have to be the primary educator, because if you allow somebody or if you allow anybody to do it, they will be more than happy to educate your child the way that they want them to be educated and learn. So that's
and it's your child.
Absolutely. We're not in agreement with the government. No, I'm sorry, Hillary. I'm sorry, Biden.
The state doesn't own your child.
I gave birth to this child. It's mine.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much. I definitely would love to have more conversations with you about other helpful subjects for parents in the future.
Sure. Absolutely. It was a pleasure. It was fun. And it was very unintimidating, which I usually am very intimidated by things like this.
Oh, thank you. And it was so great to see you. And I look forward to having you on the show again. And thanks for participating in my new podcast, The Hypnotic Quixotic.
Congratulations.
Thank you. All right. Bye.
See you later.